She didn't fade, Alex snarled, his voice low and dangerous. She suffered. Because of you. Because you threatened her. You paid her off. You made sure I never knew about Daniel. Yet, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through him. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something akin to apprehension, a premonition of an emotional reckoning he was utterly unprepared for. He saw the trip as a brief, necessary duty, a fleeting interruption to his grand design. He would go, appease his grandmother, and return to his throne, his empire intact. He was oblivious to the profound shifts that awaited him, the buried truths that Willow Creek was about to unearth, and the ghost of a love he thought he had long forgotten. The journey, he believed, was merely a physical one. He had no idea it would be a journey into the very depths of his soul. The sleek, black limousine, a jarring symbol of his urban existence, glided through the winding, tree-lined roads of Willow Creek. Alex stared out the tinted window, watching the familiar landscape unfold. The sprawling fields, the quaint houses with their weathered porches, the distant outline of the old bell tower. It was all exactly as he remembered, yet profoundly alien. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming honeysuckle, felt heavier, slower than the crisp, filtered air of his penthouse. This was a world he had consciously outgrown, a past he had meticulously shed. Richard leaned back in his chair, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. Paid her off, a rather crude way to put it. I merely offered her a settlement for her future. And yours. His eyes, cold and calculating, met Alex's. You were destined for greatness. Alexander, Willow Creek, that girl. They were anchors. They would have dragged you down. I merely cleared the path. His initial detachment began to fray as the car pulled up to his grandmother's modest, two-story house. The porch swing still creaked in the gentle breeze. The rose bushes she tended so lovingly still climbed the trellis. He stepped out, the gravel crunching under his expensive shoes, a sound that resonated with a forgotten simplicity. You destroyed her life. You destroyed my life. Alex slammed his hand on the desk, the sound echoing through the opulent room. You stole my son from me for 20 years. You orchestrated a lie that cost me everything. His grandmother, Alara Chen, was waiting for him at the door, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her eyes, though clouded with age, still held the same sharp intelligence and boundless warmth he remembered. A smile, soft and genuine, spread across her face, and for a moment, the formidable CEO of Apex Global was just Alex. The grandson she adored, Richard scoffed. Sentimental nonsense. You were a naive young man, easily swayed by fleeting emotions. I saw your potential, your drive. I merely ensured you focused on what truly mattered: power, influence, legacy. Look at you now, Alexander, the CEO of Apex Global, a billionaire. Would you have achieved any of that if you'd stayed in that backwater town, playing house with a girl who had nothing to offer? Alex, my dear boy, she murmured, her voice raspy with emotion, pulling him into a surprisingly strong embrace. He stiffened at first, unaccustomed to such physical affection, but then a strange comfort settled over him. It had been so long since he'd felt this kind of unconditional love. The sheer audacity, the chilling lack of remorse in his father's voice, sickened Alex. She offered love. She offered a family, something you clearly know nothing about. Inside, the house was a sanctuary of memories, the scent of her homemade apple pie, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, the worn armchair by the fireplace where she used to read him stories. Each detail was a gentle assault on his carefully constructed emotional barriers. He sat with her, listening to her quiet stories of the town, of his distant relatives, of the simple joys of life in Willow Creek. She spoke of the changes, the new faces, but also of the enduring spirit of the place. Love is a weakness, Alexander, Richard said, his voice hardening. A distraction. I taught you that. I gave you the tools to conquer the world, to build an empire, and I removed any obstacles that stood in your way, including her. He took a sip of his drink, his gaze unwavering. It was for your own good. For the Chen name, you should be thanking me. As she talked, Alex found himself drifting, his gaze falling upon an old, faded photograph on the mantelpiece. It was a picture of him, much younger, with a bright, unburdened smile, standing beside a girl with sparkling eyes and a cascade of dark, wavy hair. Isabella. Bella. The name echoed in his mind, a whisper from a forgotten dream. He quickly averted his gaze, a flicker of unease crossing his features. He was here for his grandmother, for family duty, he reminded himself, not for ghosts of the past. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of a lifetime of manipulation. Alex stared at his father, seeing him not as a mentor, but as a puppeteer, pulling strings, orchestrating lives, all for his own twisted vision of success. The man who had taught him everything, the man he had striven to emulate, was a monster. The realization was a profound, agonizing betrayal, far deeper than any business deal gone wrong. It shattered his perception of his family, his own past, and the very foundations of his identity. He had been a pawn in his father's ruthless game, and the cost had been immeasurable. The confrontation with his father had left Alex hollowed out, the bitter taste of betrayal lingering on his tongue. The empire he had so meticulously built, the success he had so fiercely pursued, now felt tainted, built on a foundation of lies and a stolen future. Overwhelmed by a crushing wave of guilt and profound regret, his thoughts turned relentlessly to Bella and Daniel. He had to make amends, not just for the past, but for the man he was becoming. But Willow Creek had its own way of holding on to its secrets and its memories. As he walked through the familiar streets later that afternoon, the town seemed to hum with unspoken stories. Each corner, each old storefront, a repository of moments he had once lived. He passed the old ice cream parlor where they used to share Sundays, the bridge where they carved their initials, the quiet lane where they stole their first kiss. Each echo was a subtle tremor, a crack in the polished facade he had built. He tried to ignore them, to focus on the present, on the briefness of his stay. He was here, he thought, to mend a familial bond, not to confront the specters of a love he had abandoned 2 decades ago. But the town, with its quiet persistence, was already beginning to weave its forgotten threads back into the tapestry of his life. The afternoon sun, mellow and golden, cast long shadows across Willow Creek's town square. Alex, having politely excused himself from his grandmother's watchful eye, sought the quiet solitude of a walk. He told himself it was to stretch his legs, to clear his head of the lingering scent of apple pie and the unsettling echoes of his past. He strolled past the familiar gazebo, where local bands once played on summer evenings, and the old fountain, now a little chipped but still gurgling contentedly. The town, for all its stagnation, held a peculiar, almost hypnotic charm. He returned to Bella's flower shop the next morning, the sun already high, casting long shadows across the dusty street. He found her watering plants, her back still radiating that quiet, independent strength. This time, he approached with a humility he hadn't known he possessed. His mind, usually a fortress of strategic planning and financial projections, was unusually adrift. The photograph on his grandmother's mantelpiece, the one with Bella, kept resurfacing. He pushed it away, annoyed by its persistence. He was a man of the present, of the future, not of 20-year-old memories. Bella, he began, his voice soft, almost hesitant. I spoke to my father. As he rounded the corner of the old general store, a figure emerged from the bakery across the street. She was carrying a large, rustic bread basket. Her head tilted slightly as she navigated the uneven pavement. Her movements were fluid, graceful, yet imbued with a quiet resilience. A sudden, inexplicable jolt shot through Alex. It was a sensation he hadn't felt in years, a visceral recognition that bypassed his logical mind entirely. She paused, her shoulders tensing, but she didn't turn around immediately. The silence stretched, heavy with anticipation. He stopped, almost imperceptibly, his gaze fixed on her. The distance was too great to make out her features clearly, but her silhouette, the way her dark hair caught the sunlight, the subtle sway of her hips as she walked, it was all disturbingly familiar. His heart, a muscle he had long believed to be purely functional, gave a strange, almost painful flutter. He admitted it, Alex continued, his voice cracking slightly. Everything, the threats, the money, the lies he fed me, he confessed to orchestrating our separation, to keeping Daniel a secret from me. He took a shaky breath. I am so incredibly sorry, Bella, for everything he did, and for my own ignorance, my own blindness. I was so focused on my ambition, on what he told me was my future, that I never questioned, never looked back. I abandoned you? I abandoned our son? No. He reasoned with himself. It couldn't be. It was a trick of the light, a phantom of his subconscious conjured by the nostalgic atmosphere of Willow Creek. He had seen countless women in his life, women who bore superficial resemblances to Bella. He dismissed the feeling, forcing himself to breathe evenly. He was a CEO, a man of reason, not prone to flights of fancy or sentimental illusions. Bella slowly turned. Her eyes, though still wary, held a flicker of something akin to surprise, perhaps even a nascent understanding. The raw honesty in his voice was a stark contrast to the guarded, corporate persona she remembered. Yet, the encounter left him profoundly unsettled. A prickle of unease ran down his spine. He watched her disappear into the bustling market, a vague sense of loss he couldn't quite name washing over him. The image of her, fleeting as it was, had imprinted itself on his mind, a stark contrast to the sterile efficiency of his usual thoughts. Sorry doesn't fix 20 years of struggle. Alex, she said, her voice quiet but firm, it doesn't bring back my parents, or the home we lost. It doesn't erase the whispers, or the judgment. Willow Creek was a small town, a place where paths inevitably crossed. He knew, deep down, that if this woman was indeed who his subconscious screamed she was, another meeting was not just possible, but inevitable. The thought sent a ripple of apprehension through him, a realization that the carefully constructed walls around his past might be about to crumble. He had come to Willow Creek for his grandmother. For duty, he was about to discover that destiny had a far more dramatic reunion planned. The next morning, the inevitability Alex had sensed hung in the air like the humid summer haze. His grandmother, with an almost mischievous glint in her eye, had insisted he accompany her to the annual Willow Creek Summer Fair. "Everyone will be there, dear," she chirped, "and it's good for you to see how much the town has grown." Alex, ever the dutiful grandson, agreed, though a knot of apprehension tightened in his stomach. "I know," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "And I don't expect it to, but I want to try. I want to make things right. For Daniel. For you." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the struggling shop, the modest life she had carved out for herself. "I can help. Financially. Whatever you need. A new shop. A bigger home. Anything to ease the burden." The fairgrounds buzzed with a vibrant energy that felt foreign to him. Laughter, the scent of popcorn and fried dough, the cheerful cacophony of children's games. It was a world away from the hushed boardrooms and sterile offices he inhabited. He navigated the crowds, exchanging polite nods with his grandmother's acquaintances, his gaze subtly scanning the faces around him. He told himself he was merely observing the local culture, but a part of him was searching. A flash of pride, sharp and unyielding, ignited in Bella's eyes. She shook her head, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips, a smile devoid of warmth, laced with a touch of bitterness. "No, Alex, I don't want your money. Not now. Not ever." Then he saw her. He stared at her, stunned. "But why I have the resources, I can make a difference." She was standing by a stall selling handmade crafts, her back to him, her dark hair pulled into a simple ponytail. She turned, a smile gracing her lips as she spoke to the vendor, and Alex's breath hitched. It was her, the woman from the bakery, the silhouette that had haunted his thoughts, and there was no mistaking it now. The eyes, the curve of her smile, the faint freckle just above her left eyebrow. It was Isabella, Bella. "Because it's not about money," she explained, her voice gaining strength. "It never was. It's about what you took from me, from us. It's about the trust you broke, the life you walked away from. Your money can't buy back time, or erase the pain. It can't buy back Daniel's lost years with his father." His mind reeled. 20 years. 2 decades. The passage of time had etched subtle lines around her eyes, softened the sharp angles of her youth, but the essence of her remained, a breathtaking echo of the girl he had loved. The initial shock was a physical blow, a sudden rush of blood to his head. It gave way to a complex, tumultuous mix of emotions, profound nostalgia, a sharp pang of regret, and an undeniable, almost electric spark that ignited in his chest. It was as if the intervening years had simply evaporated. She stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "What I need, Alex, is genuine remorse. I need to see that you understand the depth of what happened, that you're not just trying to throw money at a problem to make your guilt go away. I need to see that you've changed, truly changed, from the man who was so easily manipulated by his father's ambition. Bella, sensing his intense gaze, slowly turned. Her eyes, once so full of innocent joy, now held a guardedness, a weariness that tugged at something deep within him. Recognition flickered across her face, followed by a fleeting expression of surprise, then a carefully constructed mask of polite indifference. Alex flinched, her words hitting home with painful accuracy. She was right. He had offered a solution, a quick fix, the way he always did in business. But this wasn't a business deal. This was a broken heart, a shattered trust, a lost family. Alex. Her voice was softer than he remembered, a little huskier, but still possessed that melodic quality that used to send shivers down his spine. It wasn't a question, but a statement laced with a hint of disbelief, perhaps even resentment. I understand, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I truly do. I don't want to just throw money at it. Bella, I want to earn your forgiveness. I want to earn Daniel's acceptance. Tell me what I can do. Anything. I'll stay here. For as long as it takes, I'll prove it to you. He took a step forward, his voice surprisingly steady. Bella, it's really you. Bella looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. The storm in her eyes had receded, replaced by a quiet contemplation. The wall hadn't completely crumbled, but a small crack had appeared, a tiny sliver of hope in the vast expanse of their shared, painful past. Alex knew, in that moment, that the road to redemption would be long and arduous. But for the first time in 20 years, he felt a purpose far greater than any corporate conquest. Bella's words, sharp and true, had resonated deep within Alex. His money, his power, meant nothing here. What she demanded was genuine change, a commitment born not of guilt, but of understanding and a desire to truly atone. He knew then that his stay in Willow Creek would be far longer than he had initially planned. He had to prove himself, not with grand gestures of wealth, but with consistent, heartfelt action. She offered a small, hesitant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It's been a long time. Alex? Her tone was distant, formal, a stark contrast to the easy familiarity they once shared. He noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her hand instinctively went to her side, as if protecting something unseen. He called his executive team, delegating responsibilities and announcing an indefinite leave of absence. His board, accustomed to his relentless drive, was stunned. But Alex was resolute. For the first time in years, his focus wasn't on quarterly reports or market shares, but on a small town and the family he desperately hoped to reclaim. Then, a small boy, no older than 8 or 9, darted out from behind the craft stall, clutching a brightly colored pinwheel. He had a mop of unruly brown hair and eyes that were strikingly familiar, a shade of warm hazel, almost identical to Alex's own. The boy looked up at Bella, then his gaze shifted to Alex, a curious, innocent stare. His first step was subtle. He began frequenting Bella's blooms, not as a customer, but as a quiet presence. He'd offer to carry heavy bags of soil, help unload deliveries, or simply sit and observe Daniel, who was often drawing in the back room. Daniel, initially shy and wary, slowly began to warm to Alex's consistent, non-demanding presence. Alex would tell him stories about the city, about technology, sparking a curious light in the boy's eyes. A cold dread washed over Alex, mingling with the spark of recognition. He looked from the boy to Bella, then back to the boy. The resemblance was uncanny, a terrifying suspicion, a possibility he hadn't dared to entertain, began to solidify in his mind. Bella, noticing his gaze, quickly pulled the boy closer, a protective instinct flaring in her eyes. Her silence, her wariness, suddenly made a chilling kind of sense. The reunion he had dismissed as an inconvenience was rapidly transforming into a confrontation with a past he had not only forgotten, but perhaps had actively created. The encounter at the fair had shattered Alex's composure. The carefully constructed facade of indifference he had maintained for 2 decades crumbled under the weight of Bella's presence and the unsettling gaze of the young boy. He spent the rest of the fair in a daze, the festive sounds and vibrant colors blurring around him. His grandmother, sensing his distraction, gave him knowing glances but wisely remained silent. Beyond the flower shop, Alex started to look at Willow Creek with new eyes. He saw the potential, the untapped resources, the struggling local businesses that mirrored Bella's own. He saw the resilience of its people, but also their quiet desperation. He realized he could apply his business acumen here, not to dominate, but to uplift. Later that evening, Alex found himself pacing his grandmother's small living room, the image of Daniel's hazel eyes, so uncannily like his own, flashed repeatedly in his mind. He needed answers, but how to get them from a woman who clearly wanted nothing to do with him? He started small. He offered free consultations to local entrepreneurs, sharing insights on marketing, supply chain optimization, and digital presence. He helped the struggling general store modernize its inventory system and advised the local bakery on expanding its online reach. He wasn't the ruthless CEO, but a committed member of the community, rolling up his sleeves, sharing his knowledge. The next day, driven by an urgency he hadn't felt in years, Alex sought Bella out. He found her at a small, quaint flower shop on the edge of town, arranging a bouquet of sunflowers with a delicate precision that belied the strength he now knew she possessed. The shop, Bella's blooms, was charming but looked like it was struggling. The paint peeling in places, the sign faded. His efforts began to yield results. The general store saw an increase in sales. The bakery started taking online orders, and a sense of cautious optimism began to ripple through the town. People, initially suspicious of the wealthy outsider, started to see him differently. He wasn't just throwing money, he was investing his time, his energy, his formidable intellect. "Bella," he began, his voice softer than he intended. "Can we talk? Just for a few minutes." Bella watched him, a slow, almost imperceptible shift occurring within her. She saw him patiently explaining complex concepts to an elderly shop owner, saw him laughing with Daniel over a shared drawing, saw the genuine care in his eyes as he helped a struggling farmer secure a better deal for his produce. The man before her was not the ambitious, self-absorbed youth who had left, nor the cold, distant CEO. He was a man transformed, humbled by his past, and driven by a new, profound purpose. She straightened up, her movements stiff. Her eyes, though still beautiful, held a guardedness that was almost impenetrable. "There's not much to talk about, Alex," she said, her tone polite but firm. "The past is the past." One evening, as Alex helped her close up the shop, Bella finally spoke, her voice softer than he had heard it in years. "You're different, Alex." "But Daniel," he pressed, the name feeling heavy on his tongue. He watched her closely, searching for any flicker of emotion. He met her gaze, a flicker of hope in his own eyes. "I'm trying, Bella. I'm trying to be the man I should have been." Her expression remained impassive, a carefully constructed wall. "Daniel is my son. That's all you need to know." She turned back to her flowers, her hands moving with a practiced efficiency that spoke of years of quiet labor. She offered a small, genuine smile, the first he had seen in 20 years. "You're doing good, Alex. For the town, for Daniel." Her words were a balm to his soul, a fragile bridge slowly being rebuilt across the chasm of their past. The path to redemption was long, but for the first time, he felt he was truly walking it. News of Alex's prolonged stay in Willow Creek, and more importantly, his active involvement in the town's revitalization, eventually reached the ears of Richard Chen, the retired patriarch, accustomed to his son's single-minded pursuit of corporate dominance, viewed Alex's newfound dedication to Willow Creek and its inhabitants as a dangerous deviation, a threat to the carefully constructed image of the Chen family legacy. The idea of Alex acknowledging Daniel, or worse, rekindling a relationship with Bella, filled him with cold dread. It would be a scandal, a stain on his carefully cultivated reputation. Alex felt a surge of frustration, but also a deeper sense of unease. Her refusal to engage, her almost robotic politeness, was more telling than any outburst. He tried a different approach. "I heard about your shop. Is business good?" Richard, still wielding considerable influence, decided to act. He began subtly spreading rumors, casting doubt on Alex's intentions. He contacted old associates in the local government, hinting at potential irregularities in Alex's business dealings in Willow Creek. attempting to stir up suspicion and distrust. He even tried to subtly undermine Bella's flower shop, using his connections to pressure suppliers and spread false information about her business practices. His goal was clear: to discredit Alex, isolate Bella, and force his son back to the city, back to the life Richard had meticulously planned for him. She paused, a faint sigh escaping her lips. "It's a small town, Alex. We do what we can." Her gaze swept over the modest interior, a hint of weariness in her eyes. "It's not Apex Global, but it's ours." The subtle jab wasn't lost on him. However, Richard had underestimated two crucial factors: Alex's newfound resolve and the growing loyalty of the Willow Creek community. Alex, no longer the naive young man or the detached CEO, was acutely aware of his father's manipulative tactics. He saw through the thinly veiled attempts to sabotage his efforts and Bella's business. He persisted, trying to bridge the chasm of 2 decades. "I'm sorry, Bella, for everything, for how I left." One afternoon, a local councilman, swayed by Richard's veiled threats, attempted to block Alex's proposal for a community-funded renewable energy project. Alex, instead of resorting to his usual corporate aggression, calmly presented irrefutable data, showcasing the project's benefits and the transparency of his involvement. He also subtly hinted at the external pressures he was facing, without directly naming his father. The councilman, sensing the tide turning and wary of public backlash, quickly backed down. A bitter, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. You left because you had bigger things to do, bigger places to be. Willow Creek wasn't enough for the great Alexander Chen." Her words were delivered without malice, almost as a statement of fact, but they cut him deeply. Richard's most spectacular misstep came when he tried to publicly expose Daniel's true parentage, hoping to shame Bella and force Alex to abandon them. He leaked old, distorted information to a local tabloid, painting Bella as a gold digger and Daniel as an illegitimate child conceived in scandal. He tried to explain, to offer some semblance of an apology, but she simply shook her head. "It's been 20 years. Alex, people change. Lives move on." She picked up a watering can and began to tend to a pot of ferns, effectively ending the conversation. But the Willow Creek of today was not the Willow Creek of 20 years ago. Alex had spent months earning the town's trust, demonstrating his genuine commitment. When the tabloid article hit, the community, instead of turning on Bella, rallied around her. They knew her story. They had witnessed her quiet strength, and they had seen Alex's transformation. He watched her, a profound sense of helplessness washing over him. The woman he remembered, vibrant, open, full of laughter, was now a fortress. Her emotions locked away behind a wall of polite distance. He noticed Daniel again, playing quietly in a small back room of the shop, drawing intently in a sketchbook. The boy looked up, caught Alex's eye, and then quickly averted his gaze, a shy, almost fearful expression on his young face. The article, intended to destroy, instead exposed Richard's own cruel, manipulative nature. Alex's grandmother, Alara, who had always maintained a dignified silence regarding her son's more ruthless tendencies, finally broke. She read the article, her face pale with disgust, and publicly denounced Richard's actions at a town meeting. Her words, spoken with the quiet authority of a matriarch, resonated deeply. "My son," she declared, her voice trembling but firm, "has brought shame upon our family. He has caused untold suffering, and for that, he will answer. Alexander, however, has chosen a different path, a path of redemption and true honor." The resemblance was undeniable. The same light brown hair, the same shape of the nose, and those hazel eyes. Alex felt a cold dread solidify in his stomach. Bella's silence, her guardedness, her protective stance over Daniel, it all pointed to one terrifying, undeniable conclusion. The unspoken questions hung heavy in the air, a suffocating web of silence that threatened to unravel everything he thought he knew about his past and himself. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he wouldn't be leaving Willow Creek until he had the answers. Alex extended his stay in Willow Creek, much to his grandmother's quiet delight. He told his executive assistant to reschedule his meetings, citing unforeseen family matters. The truth was, he couldn't leave, not with the image of Daniel's face and Bella's guarded eyes haunting him. He needed to understand. to piece together the 20 years of silence that separated them. Richard's schemes backfired spectacularly. His attempts to sabotage Alex only solidified the community's support. His public attack on Bella and Daniel exposed his own moral bankruptcy to everyone, including his own mother. The very legacy he had sought to protect was now irrevocably tarnished, not by Alex's choices, but by his own deceit and cruelty. The antagonist's last stand had become his ultimate downfall, paving the way for justice to finally be served. Richard Chen's desperate attempts to cling to his tarnished legacy had backfired spectacularly, not only solidifying Alex's bond with Willow Creek, but also exposing his own moral bankruptcy. The public denouncement by his own mother, Alara, was the final devastating blow. The once feared patriarch was now a figure of scorn, his influence rapidly waning. He began to spend more time in town, observing, listening. He frequented the local diner, the general store, even the small, dusty library. He noticed the subtle shifts in conversation when Bella's name came up, the hushed tones, the quick, knowing glances exchanged between the older residents. It was a silent language, but its message was clear judgment. With Richard's schemes unraveling, the path was finally clear for Alex to fully embrace his truth. He knew that for Bella to truly forgive him, and for Daniel to accept him, a public acknowledgement was necessary. It was a step not just for them, but for the entire community that had witnessed Bella's long, silent struggle. One afternoon, while nursing a lukewarm coffee at the diner, he overheard two elderly women gossiping. Their voices were low, but in the quiet hum of the place, snippets reached his ears. "Poor Bella," one whispered. "After he just up and left like that. And then, with the baby." The other woman tutted. "Such a shame. Her parents, God rest their souls, never recovered from the scandal. Lost their home, too, trying to keep things afloat." One sunny Saturday, at a bustling town picnic, an event Alex had helped organize to celebrate Willow Creek's renewed spirit, he took the stage beside the old gazebo. Bella stood a few feet away, a nervous but hopeful expression on her face. With Daniel shyly clutching her hand, the entire town was present, their faces a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. Alex's blood ran cold. He had left. Yes, but he had never imagined the ripple effect of his departure. He had been a self-absorbed young man, blinded by ambition, convinced that his future lay far beyond Willow Creek. He had never considered the consequences for those he left behind. Alex took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping over the familiar faces, finally resting on Bella and Daniel. 20 years ago, he began, his voice clear and resonant. "I left this town. I left behind a life, a love, and a responsibility I was too young and too foolish to understand. I was manipulated by forces I now regret allowing to control me." He paused, his eyes meeting Bella's. "But that is no excuse for the pain I caused, the hardship Bella endured, or the years I missed with my son." He started to piece together the fragments. Bella's parents, he recalled, had owned the old bakery, a beloved institution in town. He remembered hearing, vaguely, years ago, that it had closed down. He had dismissed it as the inevitable decline of small-town businesses. Now, he wondered if his abrupt departure had played a role in their financial struggles. In the scandal that had apparently plagued Bella, a hush fell over the crowd. He saw the way people looked at Bella when she walked through the town square, a mix of pity, disdain, and a strange kind of reverence for her quiet resilience. She carried herself with dignity, but the weight of their unspoken judgment seemed to cling to her like a shadow. He observed her interactions polite but brief, always with a hint of reserve. She was an outsider, even in her own hometown, defined by a past Alex was only just beginning to comprehend. "Daniel," Alex continued, turning to the boy, his voice thick with emotion, "is my son. My biological son. And Bella Rossi," he turned to her, a profound respect in his gaze, "is the most courageous, resilient woman I have ever known. She raised our son alone, with dignity and unwavering love. Despite facing unimaginable challenges and unfair judgment, he learned that after her parents' business failed, they had lost their family home. Bella, barely out of her teens, had been left to fend for herself, and soon after, to raise a child alone. The town, steeped in traditional values, had not been kind to an unmarried mother. The whispers, the judgmental glances, the subtle ostracism, it all painted a picture of immense hardship. a life forged in the crucible of adversity. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by a murmur of whispers. But these whispers were different now, not of judgment, but of understanding, of dawning realization. The scandal they spoke of, the baby, it all pointed to Daniel. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, forming a horrifying image of a life he had unwittingly shattered. His sudden departure, his silence, his meteoric rise to power, it had all come at a devastating cost to Bella. The town's perception of her, as a fallen woman who had brought shame upon her family, was a direct consequence of his actions, or rather, his inaction. The ruthless CEO, who had always prided himself on his foresight and control, now felt a chilling sense of helplessness. He had been so focused on building his future that he had inadvertently destroyed hers. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, and it fueled his desperate need for the full truth. The whispers of Willow Creek had ignited a fire in Alex, a desperate need to uncover the full truth. The more he observed Bella, the more he saw the quiet strength beneath her guarded exterior, the more he felt a profound sense of shame and responsibility. He needed to know if Daniel was truly his son, and if so, the full extent of Bella's struggle. "My father," Alex stated, his voice hardening as he spoke of Richard, "orchestrated our separation. He actively worked to keep me from Bella and Daniel, believing it was for my future. His recent attempts to discredit Bella and sabotage our efforts here were born of that same misguided ambition and fear." He couldn't directly ask Bella. Her wall of silence was too formidable. Instead, he began a subtle, almost clandestine investigation. He spoke to older residents, framing his questions innocently, reminiscing about his youth. He visited the town archives, ostensibly looking for historical records, but subtly sifting through old newspaper clippings and public records. He then looked directly at the townspeople. "I stand before you today not as the CEO of Apex Global, but as a man seeking redemption, a man who wants nothing more than to be a father to his son, and to earn back the trust of the woman he loves." What he uncovered was a heartbreaking tapestry of sacrifice. After he left, Bella had indeed tried to reach him. Letters, phone calls, all had gone unanswered. He remembered his father, Richard, intercepting his mail, dismissing any calls from Willow Creek as distractions. He had been too caught up in his new life, too eager to shed his past, to question it. A wave of applause, hesitant at first, then growing in strength, swept through the crowd. Many of the older residents, who had once whispered behind their hands, now looked at Bella with profound regret and admiration. The truth, finally out in the open, had a powerful, liberating effect. Bella's parents, he learned, had fought valiantly to save their bakery, but the economic downturn coupled with a sudden, unexplained loss of a major contract had crippled them. The scandal that followed Bella's pregnancy had been the final blow, driving away customers and accelerating their financial ruin. They had lost everything, including their beloved home. Richard Chen, watching from his distant mansion, heard the news of Alex's public confession. The backlash was immediate and severe. His remaining business associates, wary of the scandal and the public's condemnation, began to distance themselves. Investigations into his past dealings, spurred by Alex's subtle hints and the public outcry, unearthed more than just the manipulation of Bella. There were allegations of financial impropriety, of unethical business practices that had long been swept under the rug. Richard, once untouchable, faced legal repercussions and social ostracism, his carefully constructed empire of reputation crumbling around him. Justice, though delayed, had finally arrived. Bella, barely an adult, had faced it all alone. Her parents, broken by the hardship and the societal judgment, had passed away within a few years of each other, leaving her with nothing but a mountain of debt and a newborn son. She had sold what little she had, worked multiple grueling jobs, cleaning houses, waiting tables, anything to put food on the table and keep a roof over Daniel's head. The flower shop, Bella's Blooms, was her latest, most hopeful venture, a testament to her enduring spirit, but it was still a fragile dream. As the picnic continued, Bella, her eyes shining with unshed tears, finally allowed herself to lean into Alex's embrace. Daniel, no longer shy, looked up at Alex with a newfound curiosity and a tentative smile. The town, witnessing this raw, emotional moment, shifted its perception of Bella. embracing her and Daniel no longer as figures of scandal, but as symbols of resilience and the enduring power of truth. A family, broken by deceit, was slowly, beautifully, being reborn in the heart of Willow Creek. The public acknowledgement at the town picnic had been a cathartic release, not just for Alex and Bella, but for Willow Creek itself. The air, once thick with unspoken judgments and lingering shadows, now felt lighter, filled with a renewed sense of community and hope. Richard Chen's downfall, swift and absolute, served as a stark reminder that true power lay not in manipulation, but in integrity and genuine connection. He discovered that Bella had never sought help from anyone, not even her distant relatives. She had faced the town's judgment with quiet defiance, her head held high. She had shielded Daniel from the worst of the gossip, creating a loving, if materially modest, world for him. Every penny she earned, every ounce of her strength, had gone into providing for her son. There were no romantic entanglements, no other men in her life. Her entire existence revolved around Daniel. For Alex, the transformation was profound. The ruthless CEO, driven by ambition and a hunger for control, had been replaced by a man grounded in love and responsibility. He still maintained his position at Apex Global, but his priorities had irrevocably shifted. The corporate world, once his sole focus, now felt distant, a necessary means to an end rather than the end itself. The timeline was damningly clear. Daniel's birth date aligned perfectly with the period shortly after Alex had left Willow Creek. The hazel eyes, the unruly brown hair, the quiet intensity, it all screamed his own genetic imprint. The suspicion that had gnawed at him had now hardened into an agonizing certainty. Daniel was his son. He made a bold decision to establish a permanent base in Willow Creek. He purchased a beautiful old house on the outskirts of town, with sprawling gardens and a view of the rolling hills, a stark contrast to his sterile city penthouse. It was a clear statement of his commitment, not just to Bella and Daniel, but to the town that had helped him rediscover himself. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He, Alexander Chen, the man who controlled a global empire, had been completely oblivious to the suffering of the woman he once loved and the existence of his own child. He had been so consumed by his ambition, so blinded by his father's manipulative guidance, that he had abandoned them both to a life of hardship and societal scorn. The scandal wasn't Bella's, it was his. The injustice of it all, the sheer weight of her silent sacrifice, crushed him. He saw her now not as a distant memory, but as a woman of immense courage and unwavering love. His heart, long hardened by the cutthroat world of business, ached with a pain he hadn't known it was capable of feeling. He had to make this right. For Bella, for Daniel, for the man he was supposed to be. The weight of his discovery, the crushing certainty that Daniel was his son, and that Bella had endured unimaginable hardship because of his absence, propelled Alex back to Bella's blooms. The gentle scent of roses and lilies, usually so calming, now felt like a suffocating reminder of the delicate life he had almost destroyed. He found Bella meticulously trimming the leaves of a potted fern, her back to him, her posture radiating an almost defiant self-sufficiency. "Bella," he said, his voice raw, stripped of its usual corporate authority. She flinched, startled, then slowly turned, her eyes narrowing slightly as she registered the intensity in his gaze. Their rekindled love was different from the passionate, innocent romance of their youth. It was deeper, tempered by hardship and wisdom, built on forgiveness and a shared understanding of life's complexities. They found joy in simple things, walks through the changing seasons, quiet evenings by the fireplace, watching Daniel grow and thrive. "Alex, is something wrong?" she asked, her tone still carefully neutral, but a flicker of apprehension crossed her features. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves turned golden and red, Alex knelt before Bella in their new home, a simple, elegant ring in his hand. "Bella," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you are my past, my present, and my future. You and Daniel are my home. Will you marry me?" He took a deep breath, the words catching in his throat. "Daniel, he's my son, isn't he?" Tears streamed down Bella's face, but this time they were tears of pure joy. "Yes, Alex," she whispered, her voice choked with happiness. 1,000 times. "Yes." The carefully constructed mask on Bella's face shattered. Her eyes, usually so guarded, flashed with a storm of emotions. shock, pain, anger, and a profound weariness. She dropped the pruning shears with a clatter, her hands trembling. Their wedding was a quiet affair, held in the town's small church, attended by their closest friends and family, including a beaming Ilara. It was a celebration not just of their union, but of second chances, of love's enduring power, and of the profound journey that had brought them back together. Willow Creek, once a symbol of Alex's painful past, had become the heart of his new beginning, a testament to the transformative power of redemption and the unwavering strength of a love that had defied time and deceit. Years unfurled like the petals of a blooming flower in Willow Creek, each one bringing deeper roots and richer colors to the lives of Alex, Bella, and Daniel. The old house on the outskirts of town, once a symbol of Alex's commitment, had truly become a cherished home, filled with laughter, the scent of Bella's garden, and the vibrant energy of a family finally whole. How did you know?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alex seamlessly balanced his responsibilities at Apex Global with his life in Willow Creek. He had restructured his company, empowering his leadership team and embracing a more sustainable, ethically driven approach to business. His once ruthless ambition had transformed into a desire to create positive impact, a legacy far more meaningful than mere wealth. He invested in local businesses, championed community projects, and became a beloved figure in Willow Creek, known not for his billions, but for his genuine kindness and unwavering support. I saw his eyes, and I started asking questions, Alex admitted, his guilt a bitter taste in his mouth. The whispers in town, the timeline, it all fits. He took a step closer, his voice pleading. Why didn't you tell me, Bella? Why did you keep him a secret? Bella's blooms flourished, expanding into a thriving community hub. Bella, with Alex's quiet support, transformed her shop into a place where local artisans could sell their crafts, where workshops on sustainable living were held, and where the town's residents gathered for coffee and conversation. She became a respected leader, her strength and resilience an inspiration to many. The whispers of the past were long gone, replaced by admiration and affection. The question ignited a fuse. Years of suppressed pain, of silent suffering, erupted. Tell you, she spat, her voice rising, finally shedding its polite veneer. How was I supposed to tell you, Alex? You vanished, you left Willow Creek without a word. Without a trace, I wrote letters. I called your family's number. Nothing? It was like you ceased to exist. Daniel thrived in the loving embrace of his reunited family. He grew into a bright, compassionate young man, inheriting his mother's artistic talent and his father's sharp intellect. He excelled in school, pursued his passion for art, and often accompanied Alex on his visits to local businesses, learning the ropes of community development. He knew the full story of his parents, not as a source of shame, but as a testament to their enduring love and the power of forgiveness. He had two loving parents, a close-knit family, and a strong sense of belonging in the town that had embraced them all. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely, her chin trembling. Do you have any idea what it was like to be alone, pregnant, in a town that judged me every single day, to watch my parents lose everything, their business, their home, their dignity, trying to protect me from the shame you brought upon us? Her voice cracked, thick with unshed tears. They died. Alex. They died heartbroken, and I was left with nothing but a newborn and a mountain of debt. Richard Chen, stripped of his power and reputation, faded into obscurity, his name now synonymous with deceit rather than dominance. His attempts to salvage his image were futile, his legacy forever tainted by his own actions. Justice, in its quiet, undeniable way, had been served. Alex felt a cold dread spread through him. My father. He intercepted your calls, your letters. He told me you were a distraction, that I needed to focus on my future. The story of Alex and Bella became a legend in Willow Creek, a tale whispered among generations about second chances, about a love that endured against all odds, and about the profound impact one man's journey of redemption could have. They had found their true home, not in the towering skyscrapers or the quiet lanes of a forgotten town, but in each other, and in the family they had built against the backdrop of changing seasons and a blossoming community. Their lives were a testament to the fact that sometimes Returning to where you began is the only way to truly find where you belong. A bitter laugh escaped Bella's lips. Your father. Oh, he did more than just intercept. He came to me, Alex. After you left, he told me you were going to a prestigious university, that you had a brilliant future ahead of you, and that a small-town girl like me would only hold you back. He offered me money to disappear, to take care of the problem. He threatened to ruin my family if I ever tried to contact you again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more tales of love, redemption, and unexpected twists, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stay with us for the next one. And while you're here, check out our other videos. There's always more to explore. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. The revelation hit Alex like a physical blow. His father, the man he had always admired, the architect of his ambition, had orchestrated this cruel deception. The ruthless business tactics he had learned from his father, the cold calculations, had been applied to his own life, to his own love. I refused his money, Bella continued, her voice trembling with righteous anger. I told him Daniel was my son, and I would raise him, no matter what. He called me naive, foolish. He said you would never want a child from that kind of situation. He made sure Willow Creek knew I was unfit, that I was a scandal. He made my life a living hell. Alex. All to clear the path for his precious son. Alex stumbled back, reeling. The truth, raw and brutal, ripped through him, tearing apart the carefully constructed narrative of his past. His father hadn't just been ambitious. He had been manipulative, cruel, and utterly devoid of empathy. He had betrayed his own son and destroyed Bella's life, all for the sake of power and prestige. I never knew, Alex whispered, his voice hoarse with despair. I swear, Bella, I never knew any of this. She looked at him, her eyes still brimming with pain, but a flicker of something else, perhaps a tiny spark of weary hope, began to emerge. Well, now you do, Alex. Now you know the truth of what your bright future cost us. The air crackled with the weight of 20 years of unspoken pain, and the terrifying, liberating truth that had finally been laid bare. The revelation of his father's cruel machinations left Alex reeling, a profound sense of betrayal eclipsing even his guilt. The man he had admired, the one who had shaped his ambition and taught him the cutthroat rules of the business world, was nothing more than a manipulative monster. The polished veneer of his past, the narrative of his self-made success, shattered into a million pieces, revealing a foundation built on deceit and heartbreak. He left Bella's shop in a daze, the vibrant colors of the flowers now seeming muted, the sweet scents cloying. His mind raced, replaying Bella's words, connecting them to fragmented memories, his father's dismissive comments about Willow Creek, the way he'd always steered Alex away from any lingering thoughts of his past, the subtle pressure to always look forward, never back. It all made a horrifying, sickening sense now. He drove straight to the sprawling estate where his father, Richard Chen, now lived in comfortable retirement, a monument to the very ambition that had cost Alex his first love and his son. The grand gates, the manicured lawns, the imposing mansion. They all felt like a gilded cage, trapping the dark secrets within. The city skyline, a jagged crown of steel and glass, stretched endlessly beneath Alexander Chen's penthouse office. From this dizzying height, the world seemed to bend to his will, a testament to the empire he had meticulously built. Alex Chen, CEO of Apex Global, a name synonymous with innovation and ruthless efficiency, was a man who commanded respect, fear, and billions. Yet, on this particular Tuesday, a single, unassuming email had managed to pierce his impenetrable armor. Richard, a man still sharp and imposing despite his age, was in his study, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, a look of mild surprise on his face at Alex's unannounced arrival. Alexander, to what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? His voice was smooth, cultured, devoid of any warmth. It was from his sister, a gentle reminder of his ailing grandmother's persistent pleas. She misses you, Alex, the email read, and she's not getting any younger. A trip back home, just for a few days, would mean the world to her. Willow Creek. The name itself felt like a relic from another lifetime. a distant echo of a past he had painstakingly buried beneath layers of ambition and success. He hadn't set foot in that sleepy, forgotten town in 2 decades. Not since he'd clawed his way out of its suffocating embrace, vowing never to look back. Alex didn't bother with pleasantries. He walked directly to his father's desk, his eyes burning with a cold fury Richard had rarely seen. "Bella told me everything." Alex sighed, the sound a rare admission of weariness. His life was a meticulously choreographed dance of high-stakes deals, global conferences, and relentless expansion. A detour to Willow Creek felt like a disruption, an inconvenient obligation. But his grandmother, a woman whose quiet strength had been the only constant in his tumultuous youth, held a sway over him that even his vast fortune couldn't buy. Her voice, frail yet firm, had been the last genuine connection to a part of him he'd long believed dead. Richard's expression remained unreadable for a moment. Then a flicker of something, annoyance, perhaps, or a subtle shift in calculation, crossed his features. He set his glass down. "Bella?" "Ah, yes, the girl from Willow Creek." I thought she would have faded into obscurity by now. He leaned back in his ergonomic chair, the city lights twinkling like a million unblinking eyes below. The thought of Willow Creek conjured images of dusty roads, simple folk, and a past he had deliberately erased. He had built his empire on the ashes of that past, fueled by a burning desire to prove himself, to escape the shadows of poverty and perceived weakness. He was Alexander Chen now, a titan, a force of nature. Willow Creek had no place in his present, or so he told himself. Bella, cautious at first, gradually allowed herself to fully embrace the possibility of a future with Alex. The years of pain and solitude had left their scars, but Alex's unwavering presence, his genuine efforts, and the visible change in him slowly healed those wounds. They spent hours talking, recounting the lost years, filling in the gaps, building a new foundation of honesty and mutual respect. Daniel, witnessing his mother's growing happiness and Alex's consistent love, blossomed. He no longer averted his gaze, but sought Alex out, eager to share his drawings, his school stories, his dreams. The bond between father and son, once a painful void, now grew stronger with each passing day.